Did you know there's a Goldwater Brewing Company in Arizona?
I actually did not. I
Yeah,
will be that honest with
There
you.
is.
I'm sorry.
And my shameless...
Any relation?
And so my dad asked me, he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, Dad, it wasn't me. I don't own it. Sorry.
Wait, so is there any relation? Or is it just...
very distant. Very distant.
Barry Goldwater's old place? It's like a Barry Goldwater high school right
I have to
here.
imagine it's one of Barry Goldwater's
nieces
progenies.
or something.
You know, great niece or a grandson or a great grandson. But I was going to ask if you'd been.
Well, you know what?
Just like, hey,
now you know what? Now I'm gonna seek it out because it's your namesake, so I have to go see it.
I think you should, and I think you should report back on the quality of the beer.
Did you know that over $5 trillion exchanges hands on a daily basis? That's an average of over $220 billion an hour. Now, how does this much money move every single day, and why does it move the way it does? Here on Drunkenomics, two bartenders who also happen to be students at the University of Nebraska Graduate School of Business are going to sit down and drink to the global economy and try and translate it into English. So sit back, relax, pour yourself a stiff one, and have a drink with us to the comedy that is the global economy. Oh, wait, is it my turn or your turn? I don't know.
Yes, it's one of them.
I don't know.
There's only one way out.
Rock, paper, scissors for it?
Rock, RPS, man.
Oh, let's go. Ready?
All right.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Scissors.
All right.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Oh, I got you.
Yes, you did.
Oh,
scissors twice in a row. That's bold.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, bold strategy, Con. But anyways, welcome back to yet another episode, yet another presentation of Drunkenomics. This is the drinking podcast with an economics problem. Wasn't sure whose turn it was to welcome back this week, but we still don't know, I guess I should say, who the more gracious host is, because the VIX is now under 23. How? I don't know. But the VIX is now at 2060. So, with that said, being the winner of the rock, paper, scissors match that we just had, and also being the more gracious host, I almost butchered that right there myself, but being the more gracious host, I would like to welcome us all back to the drinking podcast that is Drunkenomics. And we have an economics problem.
That means I get to be the less gracious host again.
Yeah. So that makes me Aaron Wong, and that makes you...
James Goldwater. Back in fine form as the less gracious host. I love it.
Yeah, seriously.
Coming up James right now. I'm liking it.
I know, seriously. Speaking of coming up, anything you want to cheers to this week?
Yeah, actually, I think really fast, before we get into our social media or anything else, everyone just needs to raise a glass of whatever you're drinking right now, unless you're currently driving or be otherwise distracting, in which case, wait until you get where you're going, be safe, be responsible, be drunkenomical before anything else. And
absolutely
be ready to raise that glass. So raise your glass with me, folks. Here's to GameStop. Hashtag GME for their first profitable quarter in 3 years?
I don't know.
3 years?
I don't know. It's been at least 3 years.
I think it's 3 years. So
good job, GameStop.
You did it somehow.
Cheers to you. One drink to you.
For those of you that could track down a very old podcast from the very, very beginning of Drunkenomics, we guest starred on a different one. I can't remember which one it was.
I don't remember what it was called.
I was saying during COVID, I would be surprised if GameStop survives.
Well, it was actually right before COVID. It was like right before COVID because we didn't talk about a pandemic or anything like that. All we talked about was
before that.
It was a shift to like physical retail, brick and mortar to to online.
Yeah.
So to e-commerce
and how they were going to have to transition their business into more of a repair base than actually being the brick and mortar, because with digital downloads and everything else, their business model was no longer viable, or no longer as competitive as it once was.
Yeah, exactly. There was less of a need for a distributor like GameStop or companies like Microsoft
near every mall or near every high school. So
exactly. So cheers to GameStop. Seriously, congratulations. They made it through.
For nostalgic reasons, I'm happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I do remember going into GameStop and buying a GameCube. Remember those things? Loved it.
Ooh.
Loved it. Exactly. That was still, I'm not going to lie, still the GameCube is my favorite gaming console.
I still the 360 for me.
Oh. Wow. Okay. So, I guess we're both pretty old
I love
school,
don't get me wrong, I love the Xbox, but I love the Xbox One. I do love it's a step forward. I don't have the newest Xbox. I will at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I'm also not much of a gamer too, so
there's something to be said for those old days with friends where you just a bunch of Xbox 360s together, projectors, TVs, and then you're just killing each other playing Halo and Halo 2.
Absolutely. Oh my God. What a time.
Oh, LAN parties, what they used to be.
Yeah. Also, I'm so bad at video games. You think that with all my chestnut checkers that I'd be great at video games, but I'm not. But whatever. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us.
Or rejoining us, as the case may be.
Yeah. Do we have anything?
I think we do have to pour one out. And I'll be honest, as our first raise a glass, pour one out, I'm going to have this pour one out be to Drunkenomics, to us. We're going to have to pour one out for us because Jim Cramer made sense today.
Ooh, yeah.
And that that hurts.
You
know,
we gotta drip a little bit here.
You gotta just, that's rough.
You know what? Like,
I don't dislike the guy. I think he's incredibly intelligent. I just think he's like, when he's right, it's like
no one cares.
Okay, but when he's wrong, it's like, how?
Well, this is the thing.
It's one of those things, like, they're almost always unforced errors.
Yeah. So like, this thing about Jim Cramer is like, I've met Jim Cramer. I've had several interactions with Jim Cramer when I was an intern at CNBC. I like the guy as a human being.
Yeah.
Very high octane guy. Like his on screen.
That much is clear.
Yeah. His on screen personality exactly the same off screen. Like exactly the same. At least it was around the studio. I mean, I never had like dinner with him or anything like that. But like, I probably have the most generous take on Jim Cramer in the entire world. And my take on Jim Cramer is that he's right about 40% of the time. It's just the 60% of the time where he's wrong a lot worse than he is right. Yeah. But he knows a lot of facts. Like he can cite things and they're accurate. Like the stuff that he cites, like when he talks about accounting ratios for a certain company, like he pulls that out like out of thin air. He knows forecasts and revisions of like 200 companies just like that.
So exceptionally knowledgeable.
Yeah, exceptionally knowledgeable. His personal forecasting, I'm not too reliant on, let's just say the least. So yeah, pour one out to Jim Cramer. Good for, or pour one to us. Oh gosh.
Pour it out to Drunkenomics.
Oh.
Well done, Jim.
Yeah, seriously. With that said.
Yeah, see, it really hurts to have to say that. If you wanna give us some suggestions for Lift a Glass, Pour One Out, which is something we're going to try and do every week now. Check us out on our social media. So that's in what used to be the metaverse, what's now just Facebook and Instagram again.
Yeah, just whatever.
You can check us out at Drunkenomics, or you can just look up Drunkenomics or at Drunkenomical, and then also, but separately, very separately, on Twitter at Drunkenomical, DRUNKENOMICAL.
Wow,
bless gracious.
Dude, you're getting so good at that. I can't believe it.
I am.
Dude, you're getting really good.
It's the lack of grace that makes it.
It really is. Yeah, last week you were terrible at it, but this week you're back on top.
That feels right. Absolutely. And then from there you can find the permanent invite that exists to our Discord, where we actually had some really great conversations in the filling
fill. Exactly. But with that said, also nothing that we say is financial advice. I know it's kind of we have to make this disclaimer. Like
it's not financial advice. It's not. This isn't. Our opinions do not reflect the views of our employers. This isn't our opinions, and if it is their opinion, it is purely coincidental. You may actually wonder where we got this kind of context from, and it's actually if you look at the end of any CNBC show, you'll see this disclaimer which says this does not reflect the views of the company, and when it does, it's only coincidence.
It's only exactly. So seriously, nothing we say is financial advice.
Absolutely not.
We got to get that out of the way because we're going to talk about things like Credit Suisse and or maybe not Credit Suisse.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
UBS. What did I say? Credit Suisse.
Yeah, who?
Never heard of her.
Never heard of it. Yeah, just like we're going to talk about hang on. Citizens Bank.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They got the whole sweetheart deal from the FDIC.
Absolutely.
Why not start here? Boy, did they.
Yeah, I'm sorry. First Citizens Bank Corp. That's who they are. Not to be confused with SVB, despite
them now being the same company.
Yeah. Well, the deposits and the loans, at least.
Right.
So $74 billion worth of assets. It used to be SVB.
Yeah, so it turns out, wasn't there like a bidding war, which I don't really want to call it a bidding war because
Not really.
that's what I'm saying. I don't want to call it a bidding war, but there were bidders. There were multiple bidders going in saying, "Hey, we want these." So
it looks like there were a few players that were trying to make plays to acquire those deposits and those loans. First Citizens Bank Corp out of Raleigh, North Carolina. That's what the SEC seems. Have won.
Yes, that's the reason why I don't want to call it a bidding war because the way they described the all the banks that went into this deal,
it looked like a bunch of contractors trying to lowball.
Exactly. So I forget who described it this way, but they said the deal terms may be explained by tepid or underwhelming interest in SVB assets.
Yeah, so, it looked like a bunch of lowballers trying to a bunch of eBay auctioneers trying to pull one over on the FDIC. And I'll be honest, if this is the deal they went with, which would assumes is the best deal they had for First Citizens Bank, they got for those of you who have not yet read the terms of the deal, they got a 23% discount on the assets they were buying. So they bought $74 billion worth of assets for a $16.5 billion discount. or $72 billion for a $16.5 billion discount.
So what did that come out to? So $72 billion worth of assets that was purchased for like what, 50 something billion or something like that? Was that what it was?
Yeah, 70 something for mid 50s.
Okay, yeah.
Which that's pretty impressive. They had to give up something for that, and what they had to give up was some stock appreciation rights, which is to say that if First Citizens Bank stock performed well enough and hit certain metrics, that First Citizens Bank would be on the hook to pay the FDIC $500 million.
$500 million.
Because it's nothing.
$500 million.
If someone says, let me explain how kickbacks work. And I guess really fast, I'm going to say legally this isn't a kickback, and I'm not actually accusing the FDIC of this being a kickback.
No, sure.
What I'm saying is,
what are you? What are you, Tony Soprano? I mean,
yeah. So the way a kickback works essentially is, you give me your business, and then I kick some of that back to you down the road for it. I overbid, you select me, and then I give you some of that money. I'm not saying that First Citizens is giving a kickback, but I am saying that when I get a $16.5 billion discount and the most money I may have to pay in the future for good performance on my part is $500 million, I'm going to book, and this isn't actual accounting because this isn't how it actually works, but I would say personally, I would book a $16 billion win, just send the $500 million check tomorrow and go. Thanks.
Yeah, well, it's assuming
you
these
played
assets.
Yourself.
Well, it's assuming obviously, like when you're buying $72 billion worth of assets, even discount or not, right? Doesn't mean it can't sink below.
No, it doesn't mean it can't affect your balance sheet later.
Right.
Now again, this is deposits and loans, so it'll affect the bank's ratios.
Well,
the fact that this money is still in deposits at the SVB receiver bank that the FDIC is currently running, the fact that the money hasn't been pulled and taken to a different institution, which they could have been doing, suggests that it's probably not going anywhere.
Like, what do you mean not going anywhere? You mean like
that it'll go into First Citizens Bank, and that the person whose money is deposited isn't about to pull it and take it to JP Morgan, isn't about to pull it and take it to Chase Manhattan. They were happy to let it stay. They were happy to let it once FDIC stepped in, because they've had, again, since last week, they've had the ability to take this money and go to a different bank.
Yeah.
And because they have not done so, it would seem to suggest that they're not overly concerned about where their money goes. They are, but they're trusting the system. So they're probably not going to go, oh, First Citizens? Absolutely not. Take it to Wells Fargo, please. I doubt that'll happen. So they're probably not going to worry about too much depositor flight.
Well, I think we can say a couple of things about this. Is one, the markets seem to like it pretty good, right? I mean, First Citizens
is up 53% today, weren't they?
They were up quite a bit, and then they kind of retreated a little bit since. But yeah, I mean,
53% in a day is. I mean, if you're down 20%, they stop trading.
Yeah, dude, that's okay. So, all right then. I guess, that's quite the performance.
A day high, 9-10.
Yeah, so you're right. Open. Yeah, I was looking at something else probably, but So obviously the markets are pretty optimistic about this deal. It seems like nobody's gonna. Apparently, none of the depositors
let's put it this way.
Freaking out now.
They closed Friday at 582.55.
That's what I'm saying.
And they opened Monday at 868. Right, so that's after hours trading. That was pretty wild. But we have to put that all into today's trading. And so up 53% today.
Yeah,
so
dude. So I think that essentially is like the optimism here. Obviously, I think furthers your point in the sense that the money's not leaving, right? It's staying,
or isn't expected to.
Yeah.
But then more than that, when you find out that your bank, essentially, it's what they've done is they've said, hey, I have purchased $74 billion worth of cash and loans expected to pay out as cash for $50 billion, and the most it's going to cost me is $500 million in a payout, maybe, although with a 53% increase, probably in full.
Yeah.
And then, that's not even the best part, because there's also a loss share agreement with the FDIC.
So what's the loss share agreement?
So the loss share agreement exists out of receiver. So both these things, this sale discount and then a loss share agreement, they can only come out of receivership. They can only come after a bank has failed. So SVB has failed. It's in receivership. The FDIC is making these offers. So a loss share agreement is an agreement the FDIC will enter with a company where the FDIC will essentially say, these are a tranche of your assets. We're going to go through multiple tranches if they're available. And we're going to say that after you take either a full bath on a particular tranche, the FDIC will be on the hook for 80% of all future losses in the remaining tranches.
What?
Yeah. So you've got loans. So now I've purchased these loans, but here's the best part. If I'm a First Citizens Bank share holder is, so we bought these deposits and these loans at a discount, and 80% of the downside risk of these loans is being borne by the FDIC.
Right.
Oh,
And essentially,
that's like a chinchilla mattress. I don't know.
Dude, I feel like the sweetheart deal is like, okay, so you know what a collar is when you trade options, right? When you buy stock, sell a cover call, and buy put.
Exactly.
I feel like that's kind of what it is for First Citizens, right? It's just like you buy super cheap, like $72 billion worth of assets. You buy it for a 23% discount. Oh, by the way, you're protected 80% on the downside from the FDIC. Also, the most, like, in case this does go really, really well for you, the
most you'll be out of pocket is
$500 million, right?
It's substantially less than the discount you got.
Yeah, so the $500 million, it's essentially just like a short derivative contract, if you want to think about it that way, but cash settled, right? So it's you short a futures contract. That's cash settled. So if First Citizens, they don't actually have to deliver the $500 million worth of First Citizens shares. They just deliver.
No, and they haven't had to surrender them, so there's not a new shareholder or a dilution.
Exactly. There's no dilution. They still have control, right?
And it doesn't affect their common share market. And what they do is if our common shares end up a certain amount or end up enough by a certain date, depending on the terms, and they say, well, the most we're possibly going to be out is $500 million, is $500 million, which, okay. You basically got $16.5 billion for free. Okay, you only got $16 billion for free. Yeah.
Oh man.
But then think about this. Like think about what a 53% stock price increase would mean for any normal shareholder that held stock Friday at close.
Yeah,
you had a great day today.
You had a fantastic day today. You had a better day than I did. That's for sure.
I will warn you that this week ahead, I would expect more volatility. As to say what Jim Cramer said that was correct is that this is a deal like this stuff, these options, this bank sale from FDIC is only possible in liquidations. The bank had to fail for this to occur, and I'll be honest, if this is what's calming the market, that banks are solid. Then again, what you're saying is the bank has to fail for these things to succeed in the future. And so it's one of those things where it's like, well, I think Aaron and I, you and I both agree that the bank should have failed.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Their chief risk officer, Kim Olson, had only been there since January 4th. For the 8 preceding months of some of the wildest times, they had no chief risk officer.
Yeah. January 4th, by the way, was the second business day of the year. So it's not like,
So she basically had 2 months to try and undo 8 months of no one at the helm, and then whatever the tenure of the previous chief risk officer was. And I'll be honest, I'm not going to say that person's name. You can look it up for yourself. Just look up who she was. And you can say that if we're going to put the fault of this on anyone, it's probably on her.
Yeah.
Well, it's on the whole. It's on all.
It's on. Yeah.
It's not just on the chief risk officer. It's on all of management.
I don't think she has like the sole jurisdiction to make these stupid decisions. This is piss poor management. I mean, this was just
absolutely across the board. There's that great scene in Margin Call, because we're going to come back to Margin Call whenever we can.
Episode,
required watching. There's that moment where Demi Moore is sitting in the room and she leans over to the CEO of the company and she goes, "I warned you about this when we talked about this." Before that, you have Kevin Spacey just looking to her, being like, I told you about this. I warned you. And then later in private, she just goes, obviously things were expressed or not as they should have been. And I'm like, I can't blame you. Everyone else was making so much money that they didn't see the party ever ending. The problem is you left in 2022 and the party ended in March of 2020.
Yeah, well, I think...
that's not true either. The party really started then, but it ended in 2020.
2022, really. But I think... So, there was an interview that Jeff Gundlach did on CNBC today. So, today is March 27th, right? And I think what he said was, in a way, in much fewer words than what we have been saying, in way fewer words and way fewer cocktails. We have been saying for the last year and a half. But... we've talked about, the relationship between bonds and interest rates and how aggressively rising interest rates or an aggressive rising interest rate environment is not good for, the current outstanding bond market. Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. I mean, even for risk-free bonds, it's still not good. Rising interest rate,
it crushes the yield.
I'm sorry.
It really improves it improves the yield. It crushes the value.
Yeah, exactly. So it crushes the actual capital value of the actual bond, the par value, or not the par value.
It's not the par value, but
whatever. The trading price of the bond, whatever I'm trying to see.
The trading price. The yield starts to do great because the capital value of the bond, the capital gain quickly becomes gone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. There you go. So that's why there's yield. But Jeffrey Gundlach in his interview today, like, what are some of the things you said? The big thing that I took away from it was if the Fed had been correct, or
if the Fed had been paying attention to Drunkenomics, and I'm not saying a lot does. But if he sounds an awful lot like he's been listening to some people that I know, and that some of you have been listening to for 3 years now.
Yeah. Jeffrey Gundlach sounds like he drinks the same exact whiskey that I do.
Exactly.
Go on.
There's something in the whiskey, my guy. No, but he said essentially that if the Fed had not assumed that inflation was transitory, if the Fed had been proactive sooner.
That was the big thing that I think he said was that, yeah.
He said if they could have raised rates to the current level with smaller increases. I mean, I don't remember him actually saying this part, but kind of to me, it would make more sense that if they'd been a little more aggressive early, or at least just been proactive sooner, we could be at a net neutral interest rate, real interest rate, or we could be at a net positive real interest rate right now at the 5% we're currently sitting at, done over 2 years instead of over the course of one.
I don't even think we needed, just think about, we had a whole year of QE and zero interest rate. Because, if I think about it, when you can't lower interest rates anymore, how do you keep stimulating the economy? You have to expand.
QE.
You have to expand the balance sheet.
And has the Fed done that even in the last 2 weeks? They've really expanded the balance sheet.
Yeah, it's not QE technically. Yeah, it's just new lending facilities.
Well, it's new lending facilities and overnight and repo programs,
I know,
banks.
dude. The more I learn about repo programs and the repo markets, the more I'm like, oh man, I don't know how I feel about it, right? I feel like I don't mind it.
And I know why the banks do it. It's because they see an opportunity for arbitrage. They see an opportunity to overnight make some money. Right. And so they play the game. And they all play the game. And it's like...
Yeah, but that's the thing. A lot of times it comes back to bite them, too. Because if you're a bank, you've either taken repo funds or you've given repo funds, right? Pretty frequently. And the thing about the repo facility is I feel like it's hey, I'm struggling right now. I might be insolvent unless you lend me this much money in 3 days. And after 3 business days for me, when I make some money back, I'll pay you back with a little bit of interest. That to me just screams just inefficient business and insolvency issues and whatever you want to call it.
You shouldn't be running up on insolvency issues that often.
Yeah, exactly. Where you need to borrow. And honestly, okay, I get the arbitrage opportunity. I 100% get that. But, it seems like every week you're seeing...
The fact that people are going to these facilities as often as they are
suggests... it used to not be this active. Remember when it first crossed $1 trillion and everybody was like, what is that? Repo markets are $1 trillion. It was a year ago. It was or maybe even more. It was a little over a year ago. And people were like, what? Dude, everybody keep an eye on the repo markets, man. It's $950 million or $950 billion this week. Oh my God, $980 billion. And then next thing you know, cross $1 trillion, everybody started freaking out. It's it does. It's definitely a cause for concern because it's why does it need to be this active? What are people doing that warrants this kind of activity?
And this would be my argument for the Fed and for the FDIC, who also oversees banks, and really for the SEC and any other financial regulator that's available, is these are meant to be places that are used for essentially last chance. This is supposed to be a
last resort
emergency kind of thing. If people are hitting the panic button all the time, we would often say, let's put it this way: if you call 911 for everything, you will get a ticket for misuse of 911.
Yes, exactly.
Why are these emergency lending facilities and these are being accessed so frequently by everybody? Because then they're not an emergency facility anymore. It's just this is just another way of doing business, and You're letting banks.
It's exactly like QE. It's exactly like zero, low interest rates, which is what Jeff Gundlach said, somehow tying it back to what Jeff Gundlach said. It's if the Fed just had gotten over themselves, really, is what I'm trying to say. If they had just stopped saying it's transitory, it's we're being data dependent. Janet Yellen being, and I respect Janet Yellen a lot. You know me. I respect Jerome Powell a lot.
She's a little dovish for me when she came out and said the FDIC is backing this, and then when she said last week that the Fed or that the Treasury would be potentially willing to step in to any bank if necessary, I was like, no. I was like, I understand what you're trying to do, but no. Bad decisions should be punished.
Well, I agree, but I feel like Janet Yellen now that she's in the Treasury and not the Fed, she's playing politics.
Well, she has to. She's part of the political administration.
Exactly.
She's
So
let's put it this way.
Pour one out.
I think she's really wishing she wasn't dealing with this. I think she wishes she could just be dealing with the problem that she's facing come June or July. But,
no, right, exactly.
Janet, if it makes you feel any better, I might not be thrilled with the way you've handled some of this, but I know this isn't your fault.
No, exactly. Well, and you know what? Like, and I'm sorry that you had to eat this appetizer, and then in July you have this other entree waiting for you too. But
absolutely.
I think to Jeff Gundlach's point, it's just like this is more or less like what we've been trying to say. Because if you think about it, if they got ahead of inflation, right? If they said like, okay, we're forecasting inflation starting to just run wild this fall and this winter, and to get ahead of that, let's start doing 25 basis points here, and the problem with them was like the reason why bond markets did get crushed last year, I think, is because they raised it too fast. And they had to try, because they're like, oh man, how were we so wrong in inflation? Oh geez, I don't know, but
you had all the warning in the world, and
everybody was saying that, like literally everybody in the world except for people within the Federal Reserve were saying like inflation's not transitory,
and that's the problem, and so I guess what because he came out and because Gundlach came out and said essentially the Fed has. It can do one of two, but it can't do both. It can either deal with inflation or it can deal with the recession that should be coming at the end of the year. But at this point, it's too late. Yeah, it's the Titanic heading for the iceberg.
Yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
You just start sending an away message, and it can start like sealing its watertight hatches now because it can't avoid the iceberg anymore. It's gotta do something.
Yeah, it's. We've been saying a recession is inevitable. I hate recessions, so I don't want. I mean, recessions are kind of sometimes necessary. Yeah, they're sometimes necessary, but it's like
corrections are always necessary.
Yeah,
you need to correct.
Yeah, things
recession.
Go price, yeah,
think of it this way: a correction is always necessary. Recession, for lack of better terms, is an overcorrection that creates its own negative problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you're driving. A correction is always necessary. An overcorrection can be devastating, or it's a recession. And that's what we're dealing with now, is that they undercorrected and they overcorrected. And to be fair, they haven't stopped correcting because inflation's still here. I mean, just go ask the UK. The UK bucked 3 months of declining inflation to rise to 10.4%.
Yeah, and I think we saw kind of the same thing in Europe too. Was like inflation also went up in Europe, which it ticked up, right? So I mean, it's not just a American problem. This is a global problem for sure. But I think
global problem.
Yeah, but like I don't know what the Fed was waiting for back in 2021. So in 2020, I don't know what they were waiting for to not hike interest rates. Like what were
the Fed? The Fed really missed the boat when they didn't start a calendar year of 0% of 0 to a 0.25% interest, and just the volume of quantitative easing that just had occurred for 9 months of 2020 and then 3 months of 2021.
Yeah, they took forever. Why'd you take this long to taper?
It took
the taper
9 months of 2021.
Yeah,
to taper.
Not even so. Like tapering, you're
not
still
even to get to zero.
Yeah, you're still QEing. You're still getting the facilities out there, but you're not even and so while you're tapering, guess what? The balance sheet is still expanding. You're not doing anything to. I mean, aside from bonds just naturally maturing, like nothing is happening where
we're not pulling any liquidity.
Yeah, we're this quantitative tightening. So
I think you have a Fed that, for lack of better terms, had never faced the kind of crisis they were currently facing, which was to say that the shock to the economy affected supply, not demand, and it affected the economy in a way nothing had in 100 years. And even then, 100 years ago, the Spanish flu didn't do what this did. The Spanish flu killed people, killed many millions, but it didn't have the potential to the Spanish flu did overwhelm communities and everything else, but they locked down. There were things going on other than a world war. But, the last time we saw a disease that spread with the kind of virulence of COVID was 1,000, it was the Black Death, the bubonic plague. And it changed the face of Europe specifically, and then Europe and Asia as well, and then but it changed hugely the way that the Western Europe specifically viewed economics and the rights and relationships of employees to land and to work and to the feudal society that existed. It's pretty wild. And you're seeing that now. You're seeing a similar thing now, and it's this idea that, not to get too out of it, but it's it was a place that people couldn't work because the illness prevented them. It wasn't that we don't have any oil to run the factory. All the means of production, with some exceptions, were present. Like the factory worked. It had power. because a foundry wasn't functioning in China, there may not have been steel to be throughput, or rather the steel was all coming from different sources, so it was more expensive than historically.
Right, to build the car,
but all the resources were there with cars, not necessarily the semiconductors, but then once more. But as a whole, like in the US, like restaurants were closed in many places for months. Bars were the same thing. There was liquor there. There was beer there. There was food that could get there that could be prepared by the staff. It wasn't that there was.
Well, I mean, to your point, like, so like the supply of money just increased like crazy too. The velocity of money also increased like crazy because that's kind of what happens. Yeah,
because the demand for money didn't really increase.
Yeah, well, I mean, demand for cash did. Let's say that.
Yes,
but
let's call that a lack of trust.
Yeah, exactly. Funny how we come full circle.
Yeah, funny how between illness and mismanagement, people can go to cash.
Yeah, fixed income
quick.
Portfolio mismanagement, complete mismanagement on that end. Yeah, funny how we come full circle, but. I'm so thankful for this Gunlock interview because it's the first post-Fed interview, if you want to call it that, right? Because we had the Fed meeting on Wednesday.
They said they raised interest rates
25 basis points, which earlier
in
the month
we said. So we assumed 50.
Earlier in the month, we assumed 50, and we weren't alone there. The bond markets also assumed. If you looked at the bond prices,
Street had priced 50.
Yeah, I mean, bond markets got crushed. We saw the yields contract, right? Especially with this, we saw all the yields contract after the SVB fallout and all that kind of stuff. And
see two banks failing and one bank closing in a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 5-day period?
Yeah.
Actually, technically in a 4-day period because it happened after hours on Wednesday. So that's Thursday business. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So in 4 days, 3 banks discontinued existence. 2 of them by regulatory force.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely seeing. Was that interest rates? No. As I said last week, it was the interest rates are the medicine for a high inflationary environment that exists solely because people were asleep at the wheel or refused to tighten. It's like I could even see the Fed keeping interest rates low if they tightened sooner.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like first of all, like the tapering should have been a lot. And obviously this is hindsight 2020.
Should have been faster.
Yeah.
A lot faster.
Like this is all hindsight 2020, and I think Gunlock probably. I mean, like if you ask anybody in the bond world, in the fixed income trading, municipal bond, federal government bond, corporate bond, whatever it is, any bond trading, like Gunlock's the man there. Like he's
absolutely
multi-billionaire. His I forget the name of his company. I should know it too.
The Double Line.
Double Line. That's right. Double Line. Yeah. It's a multi-billion-dollar fixed income manager.
I'll assume it's the accounting joke that when you're done with all the math, the very last number you're left with, you do a double underline.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Just how
I honestly think that's what it is.
I
think he's got an accounting background, Jeff Gunlock. But I mean,
you'll find that most fixed income people tend to come from accounting.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Like a lot of interest rate stuff. But yeah, like Jeff Gunlock. I mean, he's multi-billionaire, really smart guy. I think his street cred is you either love him or you hate him. But everybody respects him.
And usually the reason you love him is because you agree with him. The reason you hate him is because you're afraid he might be right.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're the contrarian. Yeah. So
I hate when he says this because he's usually
like,
right.
Oh man, exactly.
For me.
It's like, oh man, well I'm positioned opposite that. So shoot. But yeah. I mean, this what we were saying earlier, like when he said like you can't have your cake and eat it too. I think he's kind of forecasting this point where like okay, the Fed. Like right now, the yield curve's inverted. I think this is something he's saying too. Like the yield curve inverted. It was either him or maybe somebody else was saying this too. But I was watching a lot of CNBC today. But yield curve inverted and it kind of uninverted a little bit. But the last time the yield curve, or pretty much every single time the yield curve has predicted a recession, it inverts and then it starts to uninvert and then the recession happens. So
and that's usually because the uninversion comes from some sort of intervention.
Yeah, well, it doesn't completely uninvert, right? It starts to uninvert, right? It starts to level off a little bit, and then the recession starts to unfold, right? So, but that's kind of what we saw. The last month, the month of March, it kind of kind of flattened a little bit, right? The 2 and 10 got a little bit less negative.
And like the thing is, I think a lot of like my issue is a lot of people are distracted. But like I know a few people in the construction industry.
Yeah,
it's not great out there.
Not very many new projects.
Well, not that many housing I've looked at real estate prices.
Yes,
there are things sitting on the market. I saw a house sitting on the market, and there was a point in Lincoln where you were getting you put your house on the market Monday, you had an offer for cash by Friday.
Yeah,
and so that tells me, okay, the increase in interest rates. What has that done? Well, it's priced a lot of people. Let's put it this way: it's priced a lot of low income people out of the housing market.
Yeah.
Period.
I would say
we knew
half.
that. But to be fair, they were already
yeah.
priced out by the skyrocketing housing.
So now you're starting to price out the middle, like, you know, the middle income, you know, people that have been making. Because honestly, like, I mean, for the longest time, if you're 24, 25 years old making 50 grand, like that's a great out of college job, right? Now it's not. Like,
the problem now is I think you're kind of looking at like, and I think it should be a real wake up call for society at large, is that the biggest transfer in wealth in U.S. history is about to happen.
Yeah.
It's already started, but it's about to really happen. And that's as the baby boomers die.
Yeah, but that'll take a long time. Like, it's not going to happen in a span of 5 years, I think. It's going to happen over a span of
it's going to happen over the course of about 10 to
years.
15, over the next 10 to 15, I think. It's kind of when it's going to burn itself out.
Yeah.
But what I'll say is this, for a lot of millennials, between the 2008 housing crisis, the 2020 crisis, the whatever this next little recession, whatever this next recession is going to be, because I still firmly believe, as I've been saying for 3 years, that the one that COVID kind of preempted and did aggressively, that's the comeuppance for a lot of these issues, for a lot of the economic inequality and economic problems is still due.
Yeah,
you've
100%.
You've paved over it, but the foundation is still sinking.
No, 100%.
Like I guess, like, to long story short, for a lot of millennials, the only way they're going to get a house is when their parents die and they inherit that house.
That's kind of sad to think about too.
We're getting to a yes, it is. It's very sad because you're sitting here going like, wait, how has the greatest nation on earth, how has the wealthiest nation on earth gotten to a point where the only way for the young to afford to buy houses is to either buy something awful, get a pretty outrageous loan, be born rich, which is really convenient, or inherit property when their family dies? Which that should tell you right there.
And that segment was brought to you by BlackRock Investments.
To be fair, if they had their way, they'd make an offer on your house when your parents died too.
I
try to undercut that.
This is seriously my own personal opinion, but if you share it with me, I'm okay with it. BlackRock is a very evil corporation.
I don't know if evil may not be the right word. Absolutely amoral.
Okay.
It has no interest in stakes. It has no interest in stakeholders, only in shareholders, and it's more concerned with making money than it is inherently with what it's building. I'll say it's short-sighted.
No, yeah, 100%. I'll just stop right there. Like, it's very evil corporation.
I'll say this: it definitely drives me to the idea that you have two different real estate property tax.
100%.
States would be in a position where creating two separate property tax codes would not be an inherently bad thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they'd go, if this is a private family home owned by a corporation, it will be taxed at a different rate.
Yeah.
At a less preferential rate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that should be, because there are corporations like BlackRock, which I don't want this to be a necessary thing, but I think it should be, because people like Larry Fink and BlackRock exist. But, to your point, I think, I hate to say it, but like it seems like a recession is almost inevitable. And I think at some point, the Fed, because they've been way too late to the game, they're going to have to stop hiking here pretty soon. I think they're just going to have to.
Probably right. They're probably going to have to plateau at
maybe one more at 25. Like,
maybe one more 25.
Bond markets.
I don't see it. I don't see them being able to go above 5.5 to 5.75.
I agree.
I don't see more than 50 basis points left.
And that's what Jeff Gundlach was saying, which, like, the reason why, like, if we do have a recession, and if the recession does last as long as it does, it's all because the Fed, I think, and Jeff Gundlach really convinced me about this, but like, he was like, it's because the Fed didn't get ahead of this, right? So now, like, they're in a situation where they kind of have to hike into a recession. They tried to navigate themselves to the Fed to a soft landing, but they were late. They're, like, when you find the problem too late.
Look, I've jumped off a lot of diving boards before, and sometimes when you don't realize you haven't gone through that spin enough, you know what you end up with?
A concussion?
Belly flop.
Oh, close enough. Okay.
They say the belly flop is the concussion of the stomach.
Yeah, God, yeah. That's
of the abs that you have and the keg I possess.
I mean, this is more just a six pack of beer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but my rule has always been, why have a 6-pack when you can have a keg?
That's actually a really good point. I mean, I don't know, CO2 is expensive, but got him.
Fair.
Yeah, but I think I think Gundlach was saying, like, I think what the Fed should do. This is weird. I don't know if I agree with Gundlach on this, but he's a lot smarter than I am. So he said, I think the Fed should probably lower rates, let things kind of calm down, let the bond markets kind of calm down a little bit, and then start hiking rates again. Go another 25, maybe another 50 later, and then from there, let it sit there for a while and then come back down. But I think that's such a prolonged process.
I think he's right, because here's the first thing I think the Fed's gonna do when we run into recession, not if but when,
Yeah.
is they're probably gonna want to cut rates. And my response to that is no.
Yeah.
No, you can't. You're gonna have to keep rates the same if you really want to put money into the markets. Well, here's my thing: is
take down inflation.
Who are you trying to get money to?
Well, I agree because I think if you because the thing is, okay, fine, it costs a lot of money to borrow money, but guess what? Things are getting cheaper. That is going to be much more helpful.
As you've already got these banks abusing the repo markets. Tell them, game over. Repo markets are a thing that don't use interest rates to deal with this next recession. They're going to have to use QE and QT, and that scares me a lot. Actually, the fact that they have to deal with it that way.
I don't like that either.
And here's the real problem. Yeah. If we end up with a real economic problem, if we compare, so 2008, they gave money to the corporations and banks, and they said, "Here, fix it." And the pain coming out of 2008 lasted years, and I would say never actually recovered. I think people are still feeling that pain. 2020 of the same issue, except this time, on top of giving money to the banks and saying, "Here, fix it," which they didn't then either. Big surprise, they're not going to, folks. The government then turned around to the citizens of this country and said, "Hey, look, here's money from this side of things." And that's part of what caused, I'm not going to say that's what caused the inflationary problem. It isn't. It's part of what has pulled us out of that recession so fast that the economy really did bounce back very quickly because you allowed demand to continue.
Yeah. And well, I don't think it helped with inflation at all, but I don't think it maybe caused maybe 10% of it maybe caused 10% of the inflation that actually occurred.
Sure.
Maybe.
If it caused 10, here's what I'll say. If it caused 10%, corporate greed caused 40, and the other 50% is supply chain. Between enough. Not having product and not being able to get the product from A to B. And that's where I'm going to go on that one.
Yeah.
So I think next recession you have to, I hate to say this because it's not a great plan that you're having to go to this twice in 5 years, but it's also not great that you have to bail out banks every 10. So I mean, frankly, my view, fuck them. If you're gonna make bad decisions, if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. In my
I'm with you. Listen, man. Robert De Niro was a great character in Goodfellas. Okay, Jimmy Conway.
Absolutely. If the banks are gonna keep acting like Tommy, eventually they're gonna get made.
Literally.
Yeah, you like
that
one.
That was great. Oh no.
Exactly. But no, I think the Fed, not the Fed, but the Treasury, if it's still, I mean, I don't even know what's going to happen if this all kicks off in July or August. But I think the Fed's going to have to use QE and QT tools to try and navigate this next crisis. I think they're going to have to give money to average citizens again. I think that's what's going to happen. You have to go, well, look, we bailed out banks and it doesn't solve the problem. But when we give money to people, they survive.
Yeah, so I think this honestly, like I think that's a good plan.
It's the best of all the bad plans. It's not a great plan.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like I don't love the plan. I'm not in love with the plan. I don't, but I like it much better than here's all this free lending to these major banks, like the TARP program. Remember that? What a great idea it was in hindsight, right? I think it was very much a manipulated.
But it didn't keep Americans in their houses.
I think it was really
stabilized.
Okay, yes, all that is true. Like if you want to play the political game of all right, like this is how helpful it was. It kept people in houses. It helped all right, which is true. It did.
TARP didn't really though. If you were going to lose your house, you lost your house.
Right, but
COVID certainly it helped certain aspects, but it didn't stabilize the housing market.
Right, but like the thing about TARP, there were like great tangible benefits to the economy, right, and to normal people, right. It certainly provided all those benefits to normal people, but this is still my harebrained thing, right? And I'm not gonna let go of this. I'm sorry, but I don't know who gave me the mic, right? This is just the way it is. But I really think it was one of those things where it's like, okay, we've been running this major deficit for a super long time. Let's buy all these bonds from all these different banks and then lower the interest rates so that we can really feed that deficit, make $12 billion a month by lowering interest rates. So It could have been that too. But I think, so to your point, I like giving money to just normal people, and I say that selfishly a little bit, obviously.
Yeah.
But like it's true. Yeah. Like
so do I.
I say that because it's like I like that better than TARP because like I don't think TARP directly helped that many people on the ground floor. Like I think it really just helped the people that caused the system to fail.
Yeah.
So
it helped the people who created the problem.
It helped the Larry Finks of this world. Like that's literally.
But then did they turn around and did they hold the bucket for the people they made all that money off of?
Right. No, they didn't.
They threw them under the bus and they threw the baby out with the bathwater and they went, well, but we're
why
safe.
would you do this? Why would you do this?
Yeah.
Pointing the finger at us.
And they blamed them and said, why'd you try to buy a house you couldn't afford?
Why'd you take on a subprime loan?
Buddy.
It's like, well, why'd you make a subprime?
Why'd you
make Ninja?
Why'd you loan them that money?
Yeah, it's like, well, it's like, okay, why'd you take out a subprime loan? Well, why'd you make the loan available, right? Like, you were the ones that came up with Ninja, like the Ninja loan, no income, no job. You're the ones that came up with that.
Yeah, you created this thing. You know it's a bad idea, or you should. And if you don't, I've got news.
You kind of deserve to fail.
But yeah, no, that's where I'm at. And
but I'll tell you what isn't a bad idea is if you wanted to keep yourself warm with a Drunkenomics hoodie, they come in multiple colors, including black and darker black, and they can also be found at
Drunkenomics.myspreadshop.com.
That's what it is.
Here's the great thing: we are coming out of winter. We're coming into spring.
Oh,
we're
that's right.
into
Sun's
summer
Out, Guns Out
soon.
season. We talked about this last week.
And it is Sun's Out, Guns Out season. So I do know that we have T-shirts, we have sleeveless, we have golf polos so that you too can look as awesome as Aaron while you're swinging your clubs.
Probably better, but yeah.
I don't know, but
I appreciate it.
If that's not your cup of gin, if that's not your glass of whiskey, if that's not your tumbler of old fashioned.
I was gonna say like a
Manhattan
Chianti, tumbler of Chianti.
So yeah, if that's not your glass of Chinon, then by all means, if you're looking to quantitatively ease the Drunkenomics project,
nice.
Hop, skip, and jump your way over to what is it called again?
Patreon.
There we go.
Patreon.com/Drunkenomics. DRUNKENOMICS. Leave a tip in the tip jar. Help us keep the ice cubes cold. Keep the fruit peeled.
Keep the liquor out. Stop the fruit fresh and peeled.
Let's
put it this way. You got to fund some of our excursions. We've got Aaron going to Goldwater Brewing. We've got James.
That's gonna happen.
Just going drinking
at Metallica concerts.
Yeah. So if you feel the need to like I said, QE for us and not get anything out of it. If you want to be part of your very own TARP program, check us out at Patreon. Help us keep the lights on.
Yes.
And the mics hot.
Seriously, yeah. Any help is very much appreciated there. Not to mention the fact that you're drinking with us is very much appreciated. Seriously, I enjoy all these drinks with you guys. So with that, my encouragement to you as I fill and kill, as I hope you have filled and killed too. Also, continue to not brag, just continue to play chess, not checkers, but most importantly, do that, what was that,
Well, first and foremost, you gotta stay Drunkenomical.
That's what it is. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.